Sousa Show. It is sports. It is Scotty Swingler on the wheels of steel. It is Cam Stewart warming up in the bullpen to talk some Big 12. We've got Josh Neighbors, who is all things Big 12, who's going to join us this afternoon, probably around 1:40 Central Time to break down exactly the madness that is happening in the Big 12. We are presented, of course, by Slovaceks and Crawford Austin Properties. And what a crazy maddening weekend all across college football. It starts with the Big 12 for me here in, of course, Big 12 country. And I am a product of the Baylor Big 12 madness. That's how I got into this whole thing. And you can't really get me off it. A couple big things that I want to start the show with, looking at the scope of what happened over the weekend. Kansas beats Colorado. I can't tell you we didn't see that coming. Arizona State beats BYU. That did not surprise me either. Those are two shocking things that happened. Of course, Baylor beating Houston. We'll talk to Cam about that. Cam, he's kind of all Baylored out by the time I get him, but he's the guy that I like to turn to because he and I have been rapping about this all year long, and no better time to discuss it. The Kansas, I want to talk about the Kansas Jayhawks. We talked about this on this show a couple months ago. I had Cam on for a segment, and we were talking about Baylor coming back and bouncing back. We really talked about Kansas and Baylor, how they were two teams that were kind of lying in what do you say? Lying in wait. Kansas now is the hottest team, maybe in college football. What they have done, okay? Never has a team started sub 500 at 1-5, and ever in the history of college football, and has beaten 3 ranked teams in a row. The Kansas football team, Devin Neal, Jalen Daniels, Lance Leipold, the whole crew. It reminds me, I think of The Wire when I think of Kansas, and here's why. Scotty, you've seen The Wire, right? The show? No. All right, Scotty's never seen The Wire. It is an all-timer, and there's an all-time character, too. God rest his soul, Michael K. Williams plays Omar. And when Omar is coming for you, right, when Omar's on your schedule, or you're on Omar's schedule, I should say, you're in big-time trouble. And Kansas is now Omar. Omar coming. That is the Kansas Jayhawks. I would tell you right now, I would think Baylor, lucky for them, they really, and Cam can tell me differently if it's a numbers game, but right now I can really say Baylor still is playing with house money, and they don't really have anything to lose. So they are the perfect opponent for Kansas right now to be on a winning streak. Between these two teams now, they have won 9 of their last 10 games in conference play in the Big 12. That is an unbelievable heater for two programs that earlier in the season were DOA, right? They truly were DOA. And you can look at the Big 12 and you could say, well, the Big 12 is not a great conference. They don't have a team that's head and shoulders above the rest. I really counter that, legitimately not being a company guy. That's because it's a very good conference. Look at this. We got a dog shit game for you, right? Let's see, the Big 12. It is, to kick off the weekend, you've got Utah and UCF, okay? Man, that's a game, when you look at the standings, it's who wants to watch that game? Both these teams suck. Well, you're not going to find any other conference in America where the worst game of the weekend, or one of the worst, has one of the best running backs in the country with KJ Harvey at UCF. He's a guy that when you watch him play, you probably just look at the box score every week if you're a big college football fan, and you see, wow, this guy's got numbers. The guy's awesome. He's dynamic. And you know how hard it is to be a standout running back on a team that's passing game has been non-existent all year long. Well, he's that. And then you have Utah. They have a top 10 defense in the country. You're not going to find that in the goddamn Mountain West, which is a major issue I have with. I was at Utah State and San Diego State this weekend, okay, working for CBS. And I was with 2 guys on the broadcast crew who I love and who are very smart and who are very good. But they were banging this drum that the Mountain West is great, and like, man, the Big 12 might not get anybody in to the college football playoff, which is like actually on the table, which is like craziness. And I don't think come hell or high water that will happen, but it's a conversation we're starting to have. And now it's like, oh, the Big 12's known for their parity and they have all these amazing games. And like, no. This is a really good football conference. And I don't know if we're going to have to wait till – and what kind of sucks is like, so let's say Arizona State makes it to the college football playoff. So now all our eggs are in the Arizona State basket. If they go out and they have one game where they're not flawless or they lose, it'll be a reflection of the whole conference. It's a really funky position that the Big 12 finds itself in. And I'm not going to sit here and say the Big 12 is the SEC. It's not. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that behind the Big 10 and the SEC, it is rightfully the third-ranked conference in America. I believe that. BYU earlier this season beat SMU. Some of the Big 12, the Big 12, if they lack one thing, and they certainly lack this, it is non-con opponent victories. Like I think that BYU SMU win might be the best non-conference victory that the Big 12 has. I mean, that kind of sucks for the conference, and that maybe tells you about scheduling changes going forward for some of these teams. Again, those schedules are so mapped out, but there are opportunities sometime to play other Power 5 teams or Power 4 teams, and maybe that's something the Big 12 wants to look at doing, or certain teams do, because you won't find yourself in these kinds of conversations. Kansas is Omar. You do not want to see Kansas. I think the right team to play Kansas this week is a Baylor team with nothing to lose. BYU had everything to lose playing Kansas, and it was clear they got tight. Colorado, they couldn't. Their defense didn't show up. I have a major issue with Colorado taking steps backwards on defense. We talked about Robert Livingston, their defensive coordinator, who's done a great job scheming for Colorado. By the way, we'll get back to Colorado's defense in a second. Their offense was still. I mean, Shedeur Sanders had passing completion streaks of 9 and I think 11 separately in this game, through like 4 incompletions, no picks. Travis Hunter had 2 more touchdowns. Like, it's not like their offense went out and laid an egg. Their defense played atrocious. And you know what an issue is? When you can't fucking tackle, the other team's going to score a lot of points. And that is exactly what happened to Colorado. A few weeks ago, I was actually listening to a Colorado radio broadcast last week when they were playing Utah. And Gary Barnett, who's a great coach at Northwestern, great coach at Colorado, noted that, this team has really improved tackling. They're not just trying to throw guys to the ground anymore. They're hitting guys, they're dropping with them, and they're taking them to the ground. Against Kansas, they didn't do that. I mean, they were literally arm tackling guys. You can't arm tackle Devin Neal. And they paid for it. They lost. They got down early, and initially I think we all thought they were going to come back. They were not able to come back, and so now here we are. Colorado. It's not I will say, I can tell you all day long how competitive the Big 12 is. It's not a good look to be going into your final week of the regular season and have 9 teams mathematically eligible for your championship. 9 teams. What did the principal say? Ed Moody, I think, 9 times. What was his last name? Principal Ed something. Ed Rooney, Principal Rooney. 9 teams. Now, after you get, let's live in reality. After you get past Baylor, it's like out of control. And Baylor really is out of control. But to consider that they still have an opportunity. But they do. And I can tell you too, from the stuff I do with the Big 12, like, they're not exactly pumped that it's come to this, right? That no team was able to really take a stranglehold of the conference. Colorado could have really done that for you on Saturday, but hey, there's a lot of talent in this conference, and I think that Kansas early in the season, we had them ranked in the top 20. We had them as one of the best teams in the Big 12. Why are we so surprised when they start kicking people's asses? I guess it's because they were 1-5. So, okay, you got me there. But they have a ton of talent on the roster, and they're playing awfully well. Baylor was the same thing. I mean, Dave Aranda, I was lucky enough to call a couple games early and sat with him, and he talked about the fact that the player, like just the physical attributes of the Baylor football player this year had changed a great deal, which he compared more to his teams at LSU when he coached defense there, as opposed to now being at Baylor, where the student athlete was just a different breed. He had brought some of those guys to campus that were a little different this year. Not exactly the Baylor culture, maybe more the type of athlete that played under Art Briles. Michael Trigg is a wonderful example of that. Michael Trigg is making plays by accident. Like he is so good. He is literally coming up with game-sealing plays that are unfathomable. I can't believe that one-handed grab he made. That was an unbelievable catch. And Scotty, let's wax poetic a little bit about that. That Michael Trigg catch in the open field against Houston. First of all, one of the most amazing parts of that catch was he was still running over the middle of the field, and no caution to the wind physically. Like when you are so opened up to get tattooed and absolutely crucified by somebody, when you stick out your right hand like that,
although the new way football rules work make that a little more difficult, but your point is still taken.
Yeah, good point. I may be living in the Stone Ages with that, but it's still, you don't see receivers embrace opportunities like that over the middle.
No, and honestly, that play reminded me of a tweet that Cam Stewart put out about VJ Edgecombe when VJ Edgecombe made this dunk last week. That was just, he caught it back here. Yeah. He's like a foot above the rim and tomahawks it back over, and Cam tweeted, VJ just made one of the most insane one-handed putback dunks I've ever seen, and then walked away like he didn't do anything. Yes, that's what Trigg did. Trigg's running down the field, as you're saying. He's full speed, right in the middle of the field, puts one hand up and brings that ball down, and then the play ends, and it's just another play for Michael Trigg. Just another day at the office for that guy.
And I also applaud Baylor as a university and Dave Aranda. Clearly there was a little bit of smoke around Michael Trigg. He just left Ole Miss unceremoniously, basically early in the season last year, and was out of there, and was probably not your cookie cutter Baylor athlete. But there's opportunities for these kids when they come to a school like Baylor that aren't just on the football field. There's opportunities to become a better man. There's opportunities to maybe receive love and nurturing and attention that you didn't get in other aspects of your life up until now. There's opportunities for the Baylor coaching staff to give him a better experience and to make him a better man overall.
Yeah, and it's kind of an upgrade to, a couple of seasons ago and even into last season, Dave Aranda kept saying, well, we're targeting person over player. And man, as a Baylor alum, I love that in theory, but when your product on the football field stinks, it doesn't make me feel any better that the product stinks when you say something like that, right? And so remember, Trigg was suspended for a game earlier this season.
Oh yeah.
I don't know any details.
Which that really was disappointing to me, because I was like, oh man, this guy's been afforded this opportunity.
But when that happens, and then you see him come back, and still be supported by his teammates and make big plays and seemingly turn it around, and whatever that issue was, you hope he's cleaned it up and moved forward. That's what you're talking about, right? You're talking about Baylor being a place, not just person over player, but we continue to help players become better people.
And the Baylor players are helping. I remember I heard a story from a young co-ed at Baylor earlier this year about Garmin Randolph talking to Michael Trigg before the season, hey man, stay out of your own way. You're going to start the year off with one of these single-digit numbers, and you're going to have an opportunity to really have a special time here. And maybe that took a little bit longer to sink in than a lot of people would have liked, but here we are. And I want to lean on you now, Scotty. You have said something to me about a big change. Baylor's offensive line, dude, when they need yards, again, this is not a fluke that you continue to see bodies moving down the field. It happened again Saturday against Houston. They probably should stick to the running game a little more, and especially after we saw the early interceptions with Sawyer Robertson. What was the exact change that Baylor made that enabled them to? Because something has clearly
Cam would know better than I would.
All right, we'll ask
swapped,
Cameron about
they
that.
swapped a couple guys around early. Some guys moved to different spots. And yeah, man. And I just think whatever it was, moving some guys to different positions. There's a couple of guys that might rotate in. They figured it out, and that has been the most dramatic turnaround that nobody's talking about.
Yeah.
The other thing they've changed, and I love all of the backs Baylor uses, but Bryson Washington and Dawson Pendergrass are both backs that always finish falling forward.
Yeah.
And I think they very intentionally have used those two guys the most for that reason.
Yeah.
Is even when you get hit in the backfield, those two guys tend to make something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And that combination, that attitude of going to the power run game has absolutely opened up everything. And of course, I think the threat of Sawyer pulling and taking off
running
a couple
himself
times a game
Yeah.
helps as well. So they figured out all of those things. You also wonder how much did that shift when Baylor went to Sawyer Robertson as the starter rather than DeQuan Finn? How did their plan for the overall rushing attack have to change? Because you presume when you're starting DeQuan Finn, you're anticipating 50, 60, 70 rushing yards maybe coming from your quarterback each game. Whereas when they shift back to Sawyer, I think the need to have a true running attack became more present, with Sawyer at quarterback.
That's a very good point, because I was like, you had to hose me off earlier this year talking about DeQuan Finn. I'm one of those guys who goes back. I love a running quarterback that can give you that RPO threat and give me some option, right, left.
Baylor fans still talk about Robert Griffin and Seth Russell more than any other previous quarterback. And it's because those were the two guys who could just like wow you with their legs.
And even I'll tell you another mental hurdle that I've gotten over with Sawyer Robertson. It's like, even after he made the mistakes, throwing the interceptions, it's never a kind of guy where I see him drop back and I'm like, like I'm worried. You know what I mean? Like I feel like the right decision is right around the corner, which is a really refreshing feeling for any team you follow, because it starts and ends with the quarterback ultimately.
Yeah, he's got, I think it's really apparent in his play, what every coach wants out of their quarterback, which is to clear it, right? Like whether you just threw an 80-yard touchdown or you just threw a pick six, move to the next play. Like you cannot dwell on it.
Yeah.
And I see that in Sawyer every game. He doesn't dwell on what he just did. He's always looking at the next play. And he's talked before, and we've talked about this, I think, on your show, like how his faith is part of what makes that possible.
Oh, dude, there's no question.
His identity is not in that throw he just made. His identity is somewhere else. And so he takes it throw by throw, and he's really good. I mean, that's something all the good quarterbacks share, I think.
Yeah, and the team kind of has followed him, and through like dark times and then out of the darkness. Speaking of out of the darkness, Cam Stewart. He is our ray of sunshine. He is coming up next. Cam, man, you can hear him on the Cam Show. You can hear him on Locked on Baylor. You can hear him later on today with Matt Mosley. Mosley's got something to smile about with the Cowboys game. Boy, that was crazy. You can also honestly do me a favor. Listen to the Doomsday podcast. Matt Mosley and Ed Werder on the Rogue Media Network. They always mention Mike Hamilton, which I have an issue with. But either way, like I was listening to that this morning. Mike just walked in the room. I'm getting ready to leave, and Christy was she liked when Matt mentioned Mike Hamilton, which I did not like. Yeah, and I'll tell you, Christy, who's not like a football fan, she was just like in the bathroom, just kind of by accident while I was getting ready, and she laughed a couple times at the Doomsday guys. So there you go. There's my plug for Doomsday. You can hear it if you're a Cowboys fan. It is up on the Rogue Media Network. Cam Stewart is up next.
It's the Sousa Show. Sports.